Well, hello and welcome. We hope that you are going to enjoy what we feel is a very robust time together. Let's take a look.
By working together, we make elections possible. An entire community of your friends and neighbors are working to ensure a secure, transparent, and accurate election in Maricopa County. Discover what it takes by visiting beballotready.vote to learn about the November general election and how to get involved. That's beballotready.vote. Al trabajar juntos, hacemos posible las elecciones. Toda una comunidad de sus amigos y vecinos está trabajando para asegurar una elección segura, transparente y precisa en el Condado Maricopa. Descubra lo que se necesita visitando tengaboletalista.voto para aprender más sobre la elección general de noviembre y cómo involucrarse. Visite tengaboletalista.voto.
Well, we certainly hope that you enjoyed that. That is part of our overall campaign messaging to be ballot ready for the general election in 2022. My name is Betty Galanter, and I'm the voter outreach manager here in the elections department. And today is our 5th virtual webinar. So we're so glad that you're here to join us. And we're very pleased to be able to share election information with you, our Maricopa County voters. We have a really robust agenda, but before we begin, I want to mention that since this is our 5th webinar, there are lots of other virtual webinars that you can still view. Simply go to youtube.com/Maricopa Vote. While there, you can also view our Election Connection video shorts with our co-elections directors, Scott and Ray, as well as our Fill the Ballot video series. There are about 11 of those covering various topics in elections that are important to you, and they're all about 2 minutes or less. So again, you can view any of these by going to youtube.com/Maricopa Vote. And you can also register for our upcoming virtual event on October 19th. And that's going to be all about wanting to know tabulation and results. So today we're going to share what you can expect for the upcoming November election. So let's take a look at the agenda. I'm going to begin by sharing some early information about general election top line overviews. And then we're going to move to Celia Navor, who's our Assistant Director of Early Voting. And she's going to share information with you regarding the Special Election Board and accessible voting services. There'll be a short Q&A session after that. And then we're going to move into that robust panel discussion with another Q&A session. You can submit your questions, by the way, anytime. All you have to do is click on the submit your question, put that in, hit enter, and we are really going to try to answer as many questions as possible with our time that we have together. We are also then going to have a really great special chat with Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer and our communications manager, Matt Roberts. And then finally, I'll wrap up. Finally, I want to give you a few reminders. This presentation is being recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube for future viewing. So in able to enhance our time together, please keep your cameras off, keep your mics on mute. Card captioning is provided by Tracy. And we do have 2 American Sign Language interpreters today, Dustin and Leanne. So welcome, Tracy, Dustin, and Leanne. So with that, let's get started. Okay, I want to share some key election dates. You may be familiar with these, but September 24th is the deadline to send your ballots we have to send our ballots to our military and overseas voters. We currently have about 5,500 eligible military and overseas voters for the general election. Then coming up soon, and if I'm doing my math correctly, in about 19 days, that's going to be the last day to register to vote in the 22 general election. So please make sure that you know that October 11th is the last day to register to vote. The next day is when we will mail out our early ballots to voters on the active early voting list and to voters who made a one-time request to receive an early ballot. It's also the time that same-day voting locations will become available. October 28th, well, that's the last day to request a ballot in the mail. And then, of course, the USPS says, in order for us to get back the early ballot, please mail it by November 1st. And then, of course, we have Election Day on the 8th, So remember that we must receive all of your early ballots back by 7 p.m. sharp on election day. If you're voting in person, please make sure that you get in line by 7 p.m. sharp, because if you get there at 7:01, you're going to be too late and you're not going to be able to vote. All right, so the elections departments, we want to make sure that you are aware of all of your voting options. Whether you decide to vote by mail or in person, our goal is to provide safe, secure, reliable, and accessible choices to you. So we have about 2.4 million registered active voters in Maricopa County, of which 78% are on that active early voting list. And Maricopa County is the second largest voting jurisdiction in the United States. LA County is number one. And Maricopa County voters represent more than 60% of all the voters in the state. So in order to serve these millions of voters over a very large geographic footprint, the county offers 3 voting models. A voter can vote early by mail or drop off their signed and sealed affidavit envelope at any of the secure ballot drop boxes or drop box only sites, or they can vote in person. And if you decide to vote in person, you don't have to wait until election day. You can actually vote in person at any one of our vote centers for those 27 days of early voting. We're going to have about 223 of those secure and convenient vote centers open by election day in what we call a vote anywhere vote center model. Now, this model allows a registered Maricopa County voter to vote in any vote center within Maricopa County. So how do we determine where the vote centers are located? Well, we do that with data. We use data to ensure adequate coverage of voting locations in the county. As an example, here is a heat map that uses 2020 in-person voting election data. Now, this map provides great insight on where in-person voters are most likely to vote in 2022. We're going to have those vote centers open from October 12th through November 8th. We're going to phase in more sites the closer we get to election day, when we are going to be providing about 223 vote centers. Now, on average, these vote centers are less than 2 miles apart. They are near major intersections, near bus routes and light rail lines, and they are located throughout Maricopa County, not just in densely populated areas like Phoenix, but also serving our rural communities and Native American tribes. Now, this ensures that all voters in the county are offered an in-person voting option. Well, how can you find a site? Very simple. You can find a vote center location, Dropbox schedules for the November general election by going to locations.maricopa.vote. Now, once there, the searchable tool will allow voters to find vote center locations, hours, wait times, and more. You can choose when it's convenient for you to vote in person or to drop off an early ballot. And if you're dropping off your early ballot in your signed and sealed affidavit envelope, there is no waiting in line. So just take your envelope, make sure it's signed, make sure it's sealed, and you can drop it off at a vote center or a Dropbox only site. Again, to find a vote center near you, simply go to locations.maricopa.vote. Now, maybe some of you have never visited a vote center. The first thing a vote center will encounter when entering the vote center is a site book. It's essentially a touchscreen check-in station. This award-winning technology checks in voters with a barcode scan of their valid ID or by entering the voter's name. The voter registration information, it really does appear quickly because the site book is connected to the voter registration database. It then will guide the voter through a series of screens to answer questions in either English or Spanish to establish their identity and eligibility and ensure that the correct ballot is issued. Now, a trained poll worker verifies that voter identity before a ballot is even printed. The site book also allows voters to update their address and make name changes during check-in, eliminating the need to issue a provisional ballot to voters that change their name or address after that voter registration deadline. Now, that ability has helped to reduce the number of provisional ballots issued. As example, during the recent primary election, there were about 2,800 provisional ballots that were issued, compared to about 13,000 provisional ballots that were issued in the 2018 election. Overall, the site book allows for a secure and streamlined voter experience. Next, the ballot is printed on the ballot on demand printer, which you see there on the left. During early voting, the envelope is also printed. Poll workers are trained to make sure that each voter signs their envelope before they insert it into the secure drop box, as you see there on the right. Also, all of our vote centers meet ADA requirement to serve our voters with disability. All the locations are equipped with that accessible voting device that you see in the middle, which can serve those with vision, hearing, and movement disabilities. And we also offer curbside voting at all locations if a voter chooses to vote from their vehicle. Now let's take a look at the election equipment that's used for in-person voting on election day. On average, we still have about 8 to 10% of voters that cast a ballot at the polls on election day. 12% of the voters did so for the recent primary election. So every voting location has 2 secure precinct-based tabulators as seen on the left. Now, these tabulators operate on election day only and are programmed to only receive election day ballots. They cannot receive an early ballot. For election day voting, voters go through the check-in process as early voters do. And once they receive and fill out their ballot, instead of putting it in an envelope, they insert that ballot directly into the precinct-based tabulator, which then counts their ballot immediately. That information is stored on a memory card, as you can see in the middle, which is then securely sent back to the elections department at the close of election night. That information is then uploaded to the server that you see there on the right. This is a standalone air-gapped system that is not connected to the internet. Now I'd like to talk about early ballot security and tracking, something that is on everyone's mind. While every single ballot is tracked upon delivery and receipt with a unique intelligent mail barcode. You can see that on that green envelope there. That means each early voter's affidavit envelope is unique to them and to the specific election. Now, once the ballot is returned to us at the elections department, there is a chain of custody documents that track the early ballot as it progresses through every step of the process. So the combination of the unique barcodes and chain of custody documents ensure the integrity and security of that early ballot. And because every ballot is affixed with a unique intelligent barcode tracker, voters can track their ballot every single step of the way. You can simply text JOIN to 628-683 or by going online to the voter dashboard. Every voter has a personalized dashboard on beballotready.vote. On the right are a couple of examples of what those text messages look like. A voter can be alerted to when their ballots are mailed, received, signature verified, and counted. So being able to track your ballot allows you, the voter, to have peace of mind knowing that your vote was counted and also when it was counted. Now, after we receive the affidavit envelope, it's scanned to capture a binary image where trained staff compares that signature on the envelope against a known signature on the official voter registration file. This is a multi-level signature verification process, which ensures that only valid signatures are counted. Once the signature is verified on that envelope, it's opened by a bipartisan board, the ballot's removed from the envelope, and then the ballot is sent to be counted. To recap, 100% of all envelopes are signature verified by a human. Confirmed signatures are then not counted until a 2% daily audit is performed on them. Only managers review 100% of the questionable signatures, and only the verified ballots are counted. Any signature that is questionable or missing must be cured. Voters with questionable or no signatures are contacted by the elections department. And according to statute, voters do have 5 business days, 5 p.m., after election to confirm the questionable signature. And because Monday this year, after Election Day, is a holiday, that really means the voter has a total of 8 days to cure the questionable signature. That includes the weekend. Voters that didn't sign their envelope, they have only up until 7 p.m. on Election Day to sign their envelope. Now, voters also have an option to cure their signature, including by going to our Text to Cure platform. By using this platform, the voter can provide an electronic signature and an image of the photo ID with an Arizona address. Now, if a voter verifies their signature, then the verified and approved stamp from the Maricopa County Elections Department will be placed on their affidavit envelope. If a voter does not cure the ballot in time, their vote will not count. Their uncured packet will be rejected, and it is tracked and reported on the official Canvas report. So you too can be ballot ready. All voters have a personalized dashboard, as I mentioned, that can be accessed by going to our website, beballotready.vote. Once there, a voter can check the registration, update their address, print their digital voter ID card, print a sample ballot, and so much more. It's why we call it a one-stop shop for Maricopa County voters to find all that important election information. Now let's take a look at this.
The tabulation process is actually a shared process.
A lot of people are asking, well, why is Maricopa County taking so long?
So basically what you're saying, Scott, is that there's a lot of checks and balances.
I don't know. We were long-winded. I think we should do it again. No.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to our episode 5 of our monthly video series, Election Connection. I am Scott Jarrett.
And I'm Ray Valenzuela. We are your elections directors for Maricopa County.
Next up, Celia Navarro will share information about the Special Elections Board and accessible voting services offered. Now, Celia is responsible for all the day-to-day operations of 6 teams within the division. Celia has dedicated the last 20 years to working in public service at the county and state level. She joined the elections department in 2019, and she earned her bachelor's from the University of Arizona and master's degree in public administration, public policy. She completed the Arizona Election Officer Certification and has received various commendations from the governor for project management and process improvement. She's very proud of the 6 early voting teams who are focused on continuous quality improvement, innovation, and serving the Maricopa early voters during the general election.
Thank you, Betty, for the introduction. I'm really excited today to share a little bit about our special election boards, as well as some options available to voters if they're going into the vote center. What are some options that are going to be available to them there? Next slide, please. Okay, so first I'm going to start sharing a little bit about who are the election boards and what do they do. So the election boards are already out in the field working, serving voters. We had some of our team members just join us today. The leader of that team, she is a very compassionate, dedicated individual who is really always striving to serve as many voters as we can year round. But as we move towards the election, what are some of the services that we're providing? So we are already in the field of facilitating voter registration. So that could be a voter that is new to registering or a voter that might need updates. We deploy teams in teams of 2. The team members have to be of different political parties. So one individual is a registered Republican, and then their team member is going to be a registered Democrat. They deploy out into the field, and everything they do from the point that they leave our headquarters, the McTech facility, all the way to arriving to serve the voter, assisting the voter, and then returning back to the building. Everything has to be done together. At no time are the individuals allowed to perform any of the duties separate from each other. It's important to mention that all of the services are free of voters, and we literally meet them where they're at. So if they're living at an assisted living facility, in a nursing home, in a hospital, if they're still living at their personal residence, then we will go to wherever they need us to go. I also want to mention that our team works very closely with the voter, the family member that's advocating on behalf of the voter. And then if they're living in a facility, we really work around the schedule for that facility. So they have set breakfast, set lunch, set snack time, and also established times where they take the residents out to their medical appointments, out to run errands, out in the public. So our team works really closely with all of the external stakeholders and partner with everybody that's involved to really make sure that we're scheduling to meet the needs of that voter to be able to serve them. Next, I'm going to talk about alternate ballots. So we do have large print ballots. That photo over to the left, that team member, he's fairly tall. So that picture's in there for scale. It gives you an idea of exactly how large that ballot is. It's printed on a 17 by 30 inch paper. For the general election, we will have ballots that are 2 and 3 pages long for the large print. So if you request a large print ballot, you could be getting 2 sheets comparable to that size there on the left. Within the packet itself, it's going to have a few items when voters request it. Number one, of course, it's going to have the ballot. It's going to have an affidavit envelope where the voter is going to sign their name so that that can go through signature verification. And it's going to have instructions. All of those items are going to arrive in the mail to the voter in an orange envelope. You can see those examples to the far right. It's going to have our branding. You're going to clearly be able to see that it's from Maricopa County, and those are available now. So if this is something that voters feel like maybe they need, then they can make those requests. And at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing how voters can request a large print ballot. Next slide. The next alternate ballot is a Braille Ballad. Our team produces these in American Sign Language. So this packet includes the ballot, instructions, an affidavit, and those are all enclosed into that orange envelope when it arrives to the voter. So both the large print Braille as the large print and the Braille, those 2 ballot types will go out into the mail to the voter upon request, and those need to arrive here at the elections department. We need to have possession by election day, 7 p.m. So those still have the same timeline. All of the information is going to be included in the instructions that are enclosed in those packets. Next slide. Okay, so as far as the outreach that we're performing, I shared a little bit about who we're reaching out to, who are major stakeholders. Of course, voters can request this service on their own. We are doing proactive outreach to the thousands of facilities located here in Maricopa County. So we gather the information from the Arizona Department of Health Services website. They have a licensing division. If you go onto that website, they have all of the licensed facilities here in Maricopa County. So we are individually reaching out to all of these stakeholders, letting them know who we are, what services we provide, and that we're here to help them. These facilities take advantage of the services in a few different ways. One is they might request us to come in on a day to provide services to their residents, or they may post these up in the facility itself and voters can contact us individually so that we can go. But whatever meets the need of the voter is, how we'll meet the need and how we'll provide that service to the voter. So we do have these informational packets that have been going out to our facilities for quite some time now. Next slide. Okay, next up, we have a really amazing social media team here who is always doing really neat and innovative things on our platforms. One thing is they're going to be sharing information about alternate ballots and SEB services. So we really ask that you help us amplify the message. We have a team, and that team leader is very committed to making sure that we help as many voters as we can, but also that the community and the public here in Maricopa County is well aware of who we are, how we can help, and how you can get a hold of us. Next slide, I'm going to transition to the 2 options that are available if voters choose to go in person. Betty briefly touched on the accessible voting device. This device is available in every single one of our voting locations, and it creates an opportunity for voters to to vote confidentially through the process, because when they are marking their ballot, they have multiple ways that they can mark the ballot, either through touch screen on the actual screen itself. There's an ATI controller, there's a SIP puff adapter. Once they are done and they're complete with casting their ballot, the printer is actually going to print a ballot that can be tabulated. So that ballot, if they're voting during the early voting period, that ballot will be placed in an affidavit envelope that will be signed by them. Now, if they're voting there in person on election day, they'll be able to place that into the tabulator there on site. Next slide. Okay, now curbside voting. This option is also available for voters if they choose to go to the physical vote center. This option is available for voters who are unable to physically enter into the vote center. So as they arrive on the property where the vote center is located, they're going to see the sign here to the left. Those are on stand-up signs. It's going to have the phone number. So voters will call that phone number. They will relay the request to the individual that's answering the line. And then we will deploy a poll worker out to assist the voter. So when they go out to assist the voter, they're going to be requesting identification from the voter, and they're going to be signing a curbside voting affidavit. That team member will then transfer those items back into the vote center, and together with other team members, they're going to create the packet, the ballot and the envelope, the affidavit envelope that then need to go back out to the voter. What the voter can expect after that, they're going to interact with two individuals. Those are poll workers, and they're going to be from two different political parties. The voter is going to receive their ballot and the affidavit envelope, be able to cast their ballot there, enclose it into the envelope, sign it, and then transfer custody of it to the bipartisan board, who is then going to transfer it back into the vote center, and it will be securely handled from that point moving forward. Next slide. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the two options, curbside voting as well as the accessible voting device. Both options available for the voter to request when they arrive to our vote center. But I do want to share the information and how you can get a hold of us now to request a special election board services or to request alternate ballots. So if you want a large print ballot, you want a large print ballot or a Braille ballot, you can visit our website by going to request.maricopa.vote. You're going to see a tile there that says accessible ballot request. That's going to walk you all the way through where you can request that ballot, whichever you choose. We're going to receive it on our end, and we're going to start processing that request. And then on October 12th, if you were making that request now, we would be mailing it to you. You are still eligible to request it all the way up until 11 days before election day. As far as requesting a bipartisan team go out to visit you wherever you are, or go out to visit your facility, you can call us and you can email us. So we can be reached at our STAR call center, 602-506-1511. And you can also email us, whichever you're comfortable with. That email address is seb@risk.maricopa.gov. If you are not comfortable going onto the website, you choose to email or call us, you can make any of those requests in a way that's most convenient for you. So we really look forward to hearing from voters. Again, please start submitting your requests now. We want to hear from you. We're here to help you. We have teams and boards that are already deployed out into the field helping voters. And then if you really know a family member, a friend, please amplify the message to anyone that you know that might benefit from any of these services. Okay, Betty, I'm ready if there's any questions that are submitted.
Hi, Celia. This is Megan. I have a question for you from a voter who submitted the question when they registered for the seminar, and they want to learn more about signature verification security. Could you share more about how all the early ballot signatures are compared against known signatures and some of the levels of oversight there are in the process?
Okay, thank you, Megan. That's a great question. So I'll first start out by saying Betty mentioned earlier in her presentation that 100% of the ballots, the early ballots, are verified by human beings. Those signatures on those physical affidavits, we're reviewing them in a multi-tiered system. So I'll start out with tier 1 is a user level, manager level, audit level. So what are we comparing on those signatures? We're comparing the signature on in this case, it'll be the general election affidavit envelope. We're comparing that signature to previous affidavits with good signatures. What is an affidavit? That could be a previous early voting affidavit envelope. It could be a voter registration form or another request that the voter has submitted to us. So what are we looking at when we're looking at those signatures? We're looking at the letter forms. We're looking at what we call broad and local characteristics. We have a series of different characteristics. One would be initial and terminal strokes. We are all used to signing our name thousands of times. So there is a natural fluidity in a way that we sign our own name based on muscle memory and memory within our hand. We don't have to think about it. So we're really also training our staff to look for signs of genuine and fraudulent signature while looking at the broad and local characteristics. So if that user level, which is the first level, they are not comfortable, and we really train our staff to say, you are making decisions that you are comfortable and 100% confident in. Now, if they can verify the signature, meaning the current signature is verified when comparing against the historical signature, they're going to mark it as a good signature. Now, if they are not comfortable with it, they're going to mark it as an exception, and 100% of those are going to be reviewed in a manager queue. That manager is really going to be looking at the entire history of signatures for the voter. So if it's a voter that has been very diligent about voting over time, we're going to have many signatures that we can make a comparison to see if we can find a signature in the past that is verifiable. Now, we also run what Betty mentioned was a 2% audit. So we're looking at also those that have been marked as a good signature. So it's a randomized sampling, reviewing all of the staff that are reviewing signatures. And that 2% audit is running a randomized sample of signatures. So the audit is ensuring that all the levels prior, the user and the manager, have made appropriate, correct, and accurate dispositions on those signatures.
Thanks, Celia. What a great answer. Mike is asking, do signatures have to be exactly like the signature on the voter registration file? And what if folks use their initials, or sometimes they use their full names other times?
Okay, that's a good question, Mike. So we are, Megan, can you repeat the first question again, please?
Absolutely. Do you always have to sign your early ballot affidavit in the same exact way to make sure it looks exactly like what's on your voter registration?
Okay, so what we're looking for is comparable characteristics. Now, we know that there are valid reasons that there can be some small variations in signatures and handwriting, but what we're looking for is that it's verifiable, it's comparable, and that we can verify the broad and local characteristics. Now, if there are any significant differences where we are not comfortable verifying that this is the voter, because the signature is equivalent to the photo identification. If we cannot verify that signature, then we will reach out to the voter. We start out by sending a letter. The letter provides the voter all of their options to cure the signature. And then yes, they can cure their signature. So I would say if their signature has changed over time, they should update their signature. They can do that by submitting another voter registration form with an updated signature.
Thanks, Celia. Can you tell us a little bit more about if we offer ballots in Spanish or if we provide any services for the Tohono O'odham community?
So we do provide Spanish ballots. So that is something that voters can contact our Star Center, the 602-506-1511. So what you're going to see in this election, what you saw in the primary election was a bilingual ballot. So it had English and Spanish. Now this ballot is going to be an English ballot, and then voters can request a Spanish ballot. So they can submit that to us through the call center. We can also accept those through email. They can email us at evreq@risk.maricopa.gov. And then we also have some great services, and there's some translation work being done around Tohono O'odham that is going to be available on our website.
Thank you. And I would also tell people that they can request a Spanish ballot if they go to request.maricopa.vote. And if you click and you toggle over to the Spanish, you'll be able to request a Spanish ballot that way as well. Celia, that's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we hope that you found the information thus far beneficial. Now we're going to move on to our panel discussion, moderated by Maricopa County's Communications Director, Fields Mosley. Now, Fields leads a dynamic team that works with the Board of Supervisors and county leadership, providing high-level strategy along with traditional public and media relations, internal communications, social media, marketing, and video production. He joined the county executive team in May of 2015 after more than 21 years as a broadcast journalist in several states, and finally with KTVK in Phoenix. He's handled communication related to the pandemic, the 2020 election, the audit, and so much more. So we are very lucky to have him here today as our moderator. Fields?
Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. Yes, I'm Fields Mosley. I'm the Communications Director here at Maricopa County. And today we have about 40 minutes to talk to our excellent group here today to answer some of your questions discussing election results and hand counts and recounts, some complicated matters that we're going to try to boil down what it says in law and the election procedures manual and help everybody understand that's viewing this today. So there'll also be time to answer some of your questions on these topics. Make sure you put your questions in the chat for everybody. Staff is going to be working to answer as many of those in real time during the chat, but some of those we'll take to our panelists as well as we get toward the end of our questions. Let's go ahead and meet our election experts here today. We've got Scott Jarrett immediately here on my left. He is one of the co-elections directors for the elections department, responsible for all in-person voting and tabulation operations. He has been with the elections department for nearly 3 years now, has a wealth of knowledge directing our department operations, also implementing strategic direction. He works closely with the county recorder and reports to the county board of supervisors. So welcome, Scott. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Next, we have Corey Lark. Welcome. She's has worked with Arizona elections since 2019, has served as the state elections director with the Secretary of State's office since 2021. She is a state certified election officer and participates on the Bipartisan Policy Task Force for Elections. Prior to joining Arizona's elections community, she worked as an attorney in Arizona and Alaska. Welcome, Corey.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks. Ray Valenzuela, very familiar face around the elections department in the recorder's office. He is our other distinguished co-election director for the elections department, and he's responsible for all mail-in early voting and election services. So Ray joined Maricopa County Elections Department way back in 1990. I got to tease him a little bit. Everyone does. Making him a 31-year veteran. Also a wealth of knowledge about all the operations here. He is a certified election registration administrator, Secretary of State certified elections officer, and graduate of the Maricopa County Management Institute. Ray reports to the county recorder. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Bill.
So let's go ahead and get right to our questions right now, because I know people are curious about a number of things about elections, and it's always good to demystify these operations because they're not a mystery. They're just complicated, right? So how do we know the election results are accurate and can be trusted?
So I think we all probably can speak to that. I'll go ahead and start. One thing you didn't mention in my bio was I spent 13 years in internal audit before I came here. And so I harken back to something called internal controls. That's really something, just a jargony word for checks and balances. So in elections, there's many checks and balances at many, many different layers. And those layers start at the federal level, the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission, and then follow through to the state level, down to the county level, where we have dedicated professionals, public servants doing our work, and then doing that under oversight from the political parties. So all of those checks and balances, some of those are very, very technical, provide that oversight and then allow the public to be able to have trust as long as we're transparent about those and inform the public of those processes. And one of those very technical pieces, especially as it relates to our tabulation equipment and reporting results, is, and our state legislature requires it, is they've passed a law that our equipment has to be federally certified. And that means it has to go through very robust testing by experts in the field that understand computer systems and are experts with voting systems or tabulation equipment. They put those through not only security tests, but accuracy tests. They have to make sure that when we're tabulating ballots, they will count those ballots into the millions of positions accurately every single time. And the only reason they have any sort of variance at all is because if you think about it, in Arizona, we use paper ballots that can be audited and tested back to the vote. But when you're running paper through, right, you can generate dust. And so they do allow some sort of variance for that as they go through that testing, but then they give us additional guidance and tell us, well, go clean the equipment every few hours to make sure that that dust doesn't build up. And that's how we combat against any of those types of variances as well. So that certification process is really great. But then we don't just trust that federal level, right? We're skeptical of it, we're critical of it. And that's why our state laws require it to be also certified at the state level. I think something maybe that Corey could speak to a little bit more.
Yeah, so I can jump in here. So at the state level, we do require election equipment to be certified. And like Scott mentioned, it has to be certified by the federal level first in order to come to the state level for certification. So the state level certification, there is an election equipment certification advisory committee, and that's an expert in technology, a legal expert, as well as an election expert in Arizona. And so those individuals come together and they look at the federal certification, and then they also look at the application and run tests on the equipment if necessary to confirm that it also meets Arizona's requirements. And so if it passes all of those requirements, then the committee will make a recommendation to certify the equipment for use across the state in Arizona. Now, right now we have 3 separate voting systems certified for use in Arizona, and it really depends then, it's up to the county and the Board of Supervisors to determine what voting equipment they want to use from that certified list in their county.
Okay. Ray, do you have anything else to add?
I think from an early voting perspective, but trusting the results, majority of our results, 91% as an example, 2020 election general came from early ballot. So from that perspective and what I oversee, there are a lot additional things as to before you can get results, how that front loading those, in other words, early ballots have a lot of checks and balances. There are a lot of control, as Scott indicated, control items. There are chain of custody documentations for every early ballot. And Sally did an amazing job on describing our packet, its process itself, and how signature verification goes through every 100% of those packets that are returned. So before a ballot can even make it to tabulation, there are definitely major controls in place. And when we'll talk maybe a little bit later on, reiterate on the early voting process, but there definitely are a lot in front: verified registered voter, 100% signature verification, bipartisan boards, all in this in between, in front of that tabulation process. So it's just something to try to reiterate and let folks know that it exists.
And there's even additional checks and balances. I say that we're critical or skeptical of even the things that come before. So when we talk about certification, federal certification, and there's state certification requirements for tabulation equipment. For every single election, we also then do logic and accuracy tests, right? So here at the county, every piece of tabulation equipment that we're going to use, we're going to go through and test that equipment. We're going to make sure that every rotation on the ballot is actually tested to make sure that it will accurately tabulate. So we do lots of testing as we lead up into the logic and accuracy test, but then we balance that with transparency. We invite in the political parties, right? And they're here for that logic and accuracy test. And then they're monitoring and observing. They're actually signing off that we actually do that logic and accuracy test correctly, and that ballot can be accurately tabulated, and that the equipment can be trusted. But then we don't just do that ourselves, right? Someone critical, skeptical, an outside entity comes in and also does a logic and accuracy test. The Secretary of State.
Yeah, so we will come around to all 15 counties if there is a federal, statewide, or legislative contest on the ballot, and we will conduct this logic and accuracy testing on accessible voting equipment if the county uses any type of precinct-based tabulation equipment and the central count tabulation equipment. And just like Scott mentioned, we're making certain that that equipment is performing as it should, and that it is tabulating votes as the voter intended when they cast their ballot. And so what this means under statute, because it's prescribed under Arizona law, the Secretary of State's team has to make it to all 15 counties to conduct these very intensive tests within a 7-day time frame. So the statute says when we can start, and then we have to complete our work so the county can start early voting. So early voting this year starts October 12th. So that means we're starting October 5th, and we have to get our team across the state in 7 days to conduct the testing, which is, our days are very long. We get on a plane and we're traveling everywhere. But again, this is a process that's open to political parties and it's open to the public. So I would encourage everyone, if they're interested in their county processes, to learn about logic and accuracy testing and see how maybe they could observe and participate this year, whether that's by a live stream link or attending in person if that county allows it.
All right, so we've talked a lot about what we do, all these things before the election even starts, right? To make sure. Let's talk about election night real quickly. When can voters expect to see results?
Well, since actually it's quick answer is it's 8 p.m. is the first. Statutorily, we have to wait until the polls close, but 7 p.m. polls close, but you could have a line of waiting. Somebody could check in at 6:59 or 7 and still be casting their ballot. So 8 p.m. is the first time. And because it is early voting related, a lot of folks don't realize that that 8 p.m. result is not the polling place because they have yet to close, voters still in line. So the first release is early ballots, all the early ballots that we have received, tabulated up to the Sunday prior to. So we'll have mail on Monday, we'll have mail on Tuesday, but there's a lot of checks and balances as we talked about, signature verification. So the and just a plug to that, and a lot of it, folks that are familiar with the election process, why aren't the results sooner? We'll get into that as well. But one thing to help that along is to get your ballot to us sooner. So if we receive your ballot by Saturday, the Saturday prior, we can actually have that signature verified through tabulation and part of that 8 p.m. result. So if you want to have your voice heard through the sound of your vote, then get it to us by Saturday at the latest.
And we'll have 50 different voting locations open on that Saturday before election for those voters to be able to drop off their ballot.
Okay. Well, look, this kind of ties into that, the next question, right? Why can't we get all those results to the public right away? And there's a lot of things that play into this. So I want to give everyone a chance to answer this. And Scott, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Yeah, well, Ray sort of alluded to that, right? So polls close right at 7 p.m. And many voters choose right until those last few minutes right before 7 p.m. They'll show up. And if they're in line, right, we'll send out one of our poll workers, a marshal, to stand at that end of that line, right? And we could expect lines, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 minutes. We've gone through and done some analysis. Right now, the average ballot is about 70 contests. There's some jurisdictions that have a ballot that has 87 contests on it, right? So it could take a voter upwards of 13, 14, 15 minutes to complete that ballot. So in our voting location, they may check in get in line at 7 o'clock, not check in until 7:30, vote that ballot. So those poll workers are not closing that location until maybe 8 o'clock. And then in a county the size of Maricopa County, those results need to then be securely transported back from those voting locations using chain of custody records, right, all the way back to our central count tabulation center. We'll set up 15 different receiving sites. Those receiving sites will have sheriff's deputies at those, have bipartisan teams checking those chain of custody documents. So we could expect to see throughout the rest of that night, results posting all the way in, and could be even after midnight, when we're posting those next results just from election day. And then we could have upwards of 200,000 early ballots dropped off on election day that have to go through all those checks and balances that Ray was describing, signature verification. That could take time, that will then be leading in those days afterwards.
And then I just want to add that to emphasize, just this primary that we had 122,000, and Arizona is a very voter-centric state. So I think that's, that's great. You have that ability and the option. So 122,000 voters opted to drop off their early ballot at the polling place on election day. So we can't pick those up. We can't until that poll's closed. So we're not getting those back to us starting at the earliest 8, 9, all the way up in the AM. So again, if we reference back, part of the process was signature verification, 100% multi-tiered, have to do 122,000 signature verify. Then we have to send them through processing boards to ready them, and then we have to tabulate them. So when somebody says, why aren't you faster? Some of it has to do with a lot of the logistics of it, but also because we are voter centric as a state. And I welcome the fact that you have that option, that we do have to still account for those chain of custody checks and balances and all of that process to get that through. I kind of liken it to like building a bridge, and you ask an engineer, can you build a bridge in a day? And hopefully they say no. But if they say yes, I'm not driving over that bridge, and I'm not trusting it, because you have to remove a lot of those checks and balances. So the early voting and elections have that there intentionally, and it takes time to do it right.
Yeah. Anything from the state level, Corey, in this question?
I would just echo that elections are complex, and like the bridge example, accurate results take time. They take time for everyone to go through the process. And so, we will post election night results. They will keep coming in. Counties will keep providing them until they're done tabulating every vote, but it will take time.
So moving on to this next question, it's about the cure period, and that affects the counting period as well. So what is the cure period? Why does it exist? What happens there?
The cure period is specific to early balloting. And
okay.
I think prior in our earlier presentation, Sally talked a little bit, but I'll just reemphasize because it's important. Again, another voter-centric thing that the state does is it says, okay, we have voters that will have a signature that differs. Maybe you registered at 16. That's a little Easter egg. A lot of people don't know. In Arizona, you can register at 16, can't vote until you're 18, but elections are every 2 years. So you could be 18 by the time you get to vote. But when you register at 16, you have a heart over the I, or a smiley face in the O of Reynaldo. And don't go look at my registration form, but at 18, I didn't know I was going to be working in elections. But anyway, that if you have that, you may have still in that household and you're 20, 21, you matured, either you matured or your signature matured, and we don't have an exemplar of that. But the majority of people, we have exemplars. We have, every time you checked into a polling place, we have that signature. Every time you moved or re-registered, we have that. Every time you've actually submitted an early ballot affidavit that we vetted, we have that signature. But for that voter that has a questionable signature, we don't have enough exemplars. So the voter-centric part of curing is Arizona legislation built into a process that says that's subjective. help that voter, and they get a cure period, which is 5 business days after the election. And it equates to 7 calendar days, which would normally be for this election, Tuesday to Tuesday. So November 15th. However, there is a holiday, and a lot of folks may, if they're looking at their calendar, November 11th, Friday is Veterans Day. So you still get that full breadth of 5 days. So they have extended it, and it always extends whenever there's a holiday, to Wednesday. So Wednesday, November 16th, voters who have questionable signatures will reach out to them when we have that through letter. I think Celia mentioned letter, email, text. I'm going to do a plug real quick for texting to, if you want to know your ballot status, text the word join to 628-683, and you can sign up for that. But if you get that letter, that text or whatever, that's curing, is you have that time frame. And there is one other curing period that is different, which is for unsigned packet, no sig. You have until, just like the line of waiting, till 7 p.m. on election day. It's not a subjective, maybe the signature match not, it's empty. So you have the option to come in here and sign it, or go to disregard it and go to your polling place and vote replacement ballot. And
You mentioned the first question was about trust, right? So, and I mentioned there's lots of different checks and balances throughout that different process. Ray talked about some of those checks and balances for an early ballot. Like we have to check that signature. Well, on election day, if you go and vote in person, you have to show ID. So there is an option for a voter that doesn't show up and provide the correct ID for them to cure that, right? And that is a provisional ballot, a conditional provisional. So they have that same time frame, that 5 business days, 7 calendar days here for the 2022 general election, 8 calendar days to be able to come in and prove their correct ID, so then their ballot can be tabulated. And when they go vote in person, they're going to get a provisional ballot receipt that will give them all the different locations in which they can go and then take in that ID. Many of those will be their city or town clerk's offices or here at the elections department.
And just to add on to it is that voter-centric option, again, 122,000 voters exercised. And I think that's a large percentage of our total overall ballots that were cast.
15%.
15%. So to take that away, to speed up the results, we have to look at that, consider what is a return on our investment to allow those voters. But the other thing too is to emphasize how much of an effort we make from Maricopa County. I have numbers from 2020 as an example. We looked at over 25,000, what we'll call questionable signatures. Out of 1.9 million, that's a good number, but 25,000 voters we had to contact. When we were said and done for the 2020 election, we only had 587 ballots that we were not able to cure. That's a pretty substantial now. We had 1,455 no signatures, but those voters had the option. We contact them, come in or go to a polling place. But it's a good number. We had a higher number for this primary of no sigs and questionable. Not sure why, but one of the things I want to make sure we are saying now, since we're speaking to the public, if you're an early ballot voter, which again, there's over 1.9 million of our Maricopa County voters are, make sure that look at that subscription, BeBallotReady.vote to check your ballot status, or text the word join 628-683. It's like I'm getting paid to say that as many times as I can, but I really want 1.9 million able voters. I would like to have 1.9 million subscription folks to that ballot status.
I want to touch on the curing thing, or just one more quick clarification too, because I've been asked about this before, as people have questions about elections and why do you have to do that? Why would you wait 5 days? But it's the state law, right? I mean, the legislature made the law and you are implementing the law and make sure we're following.
And it gives a time for the voter, but it also, sure. What we didn't mention is why we're also results can be reported. Now, granted, and Scott can speak maybe a little quickly to 90% of our results or our ballots that are cast were reported. We were waiting for that curing period, but it's another reason why we can't officially close out that election, but it is a voter-centric option.
Corey, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I was going to say, you're absolutely right. It is in state law and it's relatively new. When we think about Arizona, we have a long history, decades back, of secure voting by mail. But this particular provision, the 5 business day cure, wasn't implemented until 2019 because it was so important to have a consistent policy across the state. So now all counties follow the 5 business day period, and it allows voters that opportunity to cure their ballot if they drop it off close to or on election day.
Okay. So I feel like we've been dancing around this, but when do we get the final results? When does that happen?
So elections departments are constantly making estimates about projections and turnout and all of those types of things. If we go back through history, we can see for a general election, on average, it's taken Maricopa County about 12 to 13 days to post those final results, right? So we anticipate that maybe we could be a little bit quicker. This time we have brand new tabulation equipment that we use for the first time in the 2020 general election.
Results on the website are unofficial results. However, once we canvass, they are considered official results and the election is then certified.
After we get the final results, and we should say too, we don't speculate about who's winning during this time. Other people might be out there speculating about who's got enough and that kind of thing. We're just counting, right? And so we get to these final results, and then afterward there is a canvass, and there's a canvass at the county level by the Board of Supervisors, and then a canvass by the Secretary of State. And can we talk a little bit about that and why that happens?
So the canvass means a couple different things, and a canvass. One meaning is the process. So that is actually all the counting of those ballots. But then it's also many post-election audits, right? So we're going through and doing verification on the number of voters that checked in every voting location and how many ballots that we have for every location. So that's part of that canvas. The other part of that canvas is what were the locations and where do we provide accessible voting devices, and creating a report for that for the community. How did we train our poll workers? And how many of them went to training, right? And creating a report for that. So all of that is part of the process of the canvass. But then you mentioned and Corey mentioned the Board of Supervisors. So then the Elections Department will then compile a series of reports. That's going to be a summary, Board of Supervisors summary report. It could be hundreds of pages that shows all the results at a summary level. We also have to prepare a report at the precinct level that shows all the results for all the contests at the precinct level. Provide that to the Board of Supervisors. The board here in Maricopa County requires that both Ray and I will provide a presentation that goes along that highlights a lot of the different stats, what was turnout, what went well, what things could improve. All of that type of information then gets presented to the Board of Supervisors as they're considering whether they're going to certify those results and whether those results are accurate and can then be transmitted to the Secretary of State for their canvass.
And then once we have all 15 counties canvasses, the Secretary of State will compare all of the canvasses and put them together in a statewide canvas. And I think it's important to stress here, this is a non-discretionary responsibility. The Secretary of State has a ministerial duty to certify the canvas based on the results as reported to us from the county canvasses. And that's to ensure that every Arizona voter has confidence that, again, their vote matters and their vote counts. So we don't have any discretion in adjusting those results or refusing to certify the canvas. And this year, the general election canvas, the statewide one, is December 5th. And it occurs in the presence of the governor and the attorney general. And because we have propositions and ballot measures on the statewide propositions, the Chief Justice will also be there for the canvas. So that will be December 5th, and we will have it live streamed available for the public to watch.
And then for the Secretary of State, they're canvassing for all the offices or the contests for which they were the filing officer. So Corey mentioned all the statewide propositions, there's 10. And then any of the federal contests, so our U.S. Senate, our congressional contests, also the statewide contests, which Attorney General, Governor, and any of the legislative contests. Here at the county, we're canvassing all the local contests, and that's what the board would then be certifying.
Okay. Ray, anything to add about the canvassing?
No, other than, I mean, it is an intense process to make sure we're checks and balances. Again, another process that has checks and balances. And it is a transparent report, sometimes 10,000 pages long to get a precinct by precinct, but it also includes what we talked about, early voting rejects. We're very transparent to say, this is how many no SIGs, bad SIGs, how many late, and all of that is to build off of and make sure the process is, for the public's purpose, transparent.
All right. Well, let's talk about another check or balance. Either way, hand counts. So talk about hand counts. What is the hand counts? How long have we been doing hand counts?
I think Ray has probably trained every election official on hand count. So
well, and I have been, and I'm going to use the word blessed, and whether you want to, I say that facetiously or not, but I do oversee the hand count, and the hand count has been in place past in 2006, so 16 years. It's been in place that, and a lot of folks don't know what that is because everybody says we demand a hand count. Guess what? We have been doing that for 16 years, mandated by law, signed by then Governor Janet Napolitano with an emergency clause that actually required, it was effective June 2006. So for our primary and general of 2006, there was a hand count. And ever since, for president's preference, primary and generals, a hand count. Just so people know, it's the process and purpose is to verify the machine are counting correctly. But how do you do that? This is what a lot of folks don't know is we bring in the political party chairs, the Dems, recognized parties, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, those county chairs select ballots, early ballots. They grab 2% or 1% of the early ballots or 5,000, whichever is great. And they grab vote center or polling places, 1 or 2% of those. So for using the 2020 as an example, we looked at over 47,000 vote positions, ovals, if you will. And when I say we, I should have said the party did, because we facilitate it. We bring the ballots, they draw which random batches of which precincts, which even random offices mandated by statute, which ones they are, but whether it's the governor, it's randomly drawn to say, is it the governor, corporation commissioner, state and such. Then on top of that, they provide the participants. Those people that are doing the hand count are not us, our staff. It is actually appointees by the county reps, county Dems, county Libertarian parties, and we'll have hundreds of folks here that'll sit down, we'll take away those results, machine results, and say, count the office of governor and tell me how many votes candidate A had. At the end of that, 1,333 for this batch. And these are bipartisan boards. Everything we do is a Dem and a Rep and a Lib. This candidate or this Republican bipartisan board said this amount, this Democrat said this amount, they match. Then we say, what did the machine say? And I can tell you for the 2020, we had 100% match of those 47,000. We did the primary as well. And we did have one variation, and we can talk what that is, but that was an intent vote. But out of these 47,000 comparisons, we are doing a hand count. It is a random sampling, and it's a statistically significant sampling to say, are the machines accurately counted?
So going back, right, the trust in this process, the checks and balances, the oversight from the political parties. One of the things that I've heard sometimes is, well, it was the Maricopa County staff that was selecting the ballots to be selected for the hand count. And no, that's not true. Ray mentioned they're randomly selected, but during that early voting process, so for the 2020 general election, 1.9 million ballots went through our central count facility. And the political party observers, the appointees by the county chairs, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, are in that room monitoring every single thing that we're doing. They're signing off at the beginning of the shift, how many ballots were tabulated on each one of our machines. At the end of the shift, how many were tabulated through that shift. And they do that in the morning and the afternoon. But then they will go through and take and say, I want that batch to be ran on that machine. And that's the one that's going to be selected or potentially randomly selected by the county chair when they come and do the random draw. So it's the political party observers that are selecting the batches. Same with the vote centers. They come back on election night. They're sealed in black canvas bags, tamper evidence seals. All of that are on the precinct ballot reports that are signed off by the poll workers, Republicans and Democrats, working out of their polls, signing off on that form. Here's the bag that was sent to you. Here's the tamper evidence seals. And then all of those get randomly put into the hat. And then the county chairs will randomly draw which vote centers are going to be selected. And then one other piece of this is there's been information about, well, why don't you use precincts or why do you use vote centers? One of the advantages of vote centers is it makes it even more random, right? It means any voter with and we will have upwards of 12,000 different ballot styles when you count Spanish. And that means any one of those ballot styles can be selected from those vote centers. If we were using a precinct-based model, that would mean only the ballot style for that precinct would be selected. So it provides a much broader or wider oversight and audit of the actual results.
Interesting, adding all the randomness to it whenever you take so many varieties. Anything from the Secretary of State side of it on this?
Well, I think we should explore what Ray was talking about with this one discrepancy that y'all found. Can you talk a little bit about the vote count verification committee and share that information and what that would look like with your hand count audit if you had found more things in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So as established as part of the 2006 legislation, part of it was to create this vote count verification committee that is made up of 7-member board. I happen to sit on it, but it's also made up of statisticians, people with advanced mathematic degrees and so on that are basically looking at what Scott alluded to, the error rate. What is an acceptable error rate? In our world, it's 0. We want it to be 0. But the law is also built to say we're looking to see if the machine's tabulating, but we also are looking for, there's one added feature to the law, Arizona law, is intent. Meaning, let's say a voter circled their whole ballot, never filled out an oval. Well, somebody, a human board, similar to the hand count board, could look at that and say, oh, their intent was to vote for candidate A. And that's exactly what occurred in this one-off error where somebody had made a mark that the machine, do we fault the machine? Is the machine broken because 0 ovals were filled in? The answer is technically no, but yes, as part of the way the statute's built. So there is a potential to have some error rates based on the way it's written. So we did have the one deviation, and that vote count verification 7-member board actually meets every 2 years ahead of a statewide election to establish that error rate, and they call it the designated margin. So right now, the new designated margin, it's been reduced so that we can make sure that we're as in much integrity as possible in this process. It's 1% or 3 ballots, whichever is greater. So there's a designated margin that these statisticians, us that know the equipment, sat down and say, if we were counting X amount of ballots, this is the tolerance we can have, including intent, meaning, did the machine fail? Well, we will count it against the machine. But again, it's a committee that is specifically designed, appointed by the Secretary of State, these members that, again, every 2 years set this standard or error rate. And we hope to have none. And I can tell you, as long as I've been doing it, that most of those, if not all of the discrepancies were intent, not the machines. Who's fallible is human beings versus the machine. And we see that when we do the hand count. When we have 2 members of a differing party saying, okay, you both have the same ballots in front of you. How many do you have? 101. How many do you have? 88. How? And again, we rinse and repeat and get it counted. But it is a committee that's established to make sure we are within that. And if we're not, and we have never hit that threshold, if we're not, then we expand the hand count and get to a point of where we could be redoing an election. Fortunately, we've never had, but it's there.
Well, real quickly, we're running short on time, so I want to kind of move along to something I know might be confusing to people. I know we've had to figure this out here. There are new laws affecting recounts as well. So, and this is for all of Arizona, not just Maricopa County, but, what does this new law say? How is it going to impact this general election? And I don't know who wants to start with that one, but I'm looking at Scott, Corey.
I think I'll take it initially. So,
okay.
Yes, there was a new law passed out of this last legislation session, and it increases the threshold for what would trigger what we call an automatic recount, right? So it used to be 0.1% or a number of votes, usually. So for a statewide contest or a presidential election, 200, whichever was fewer. Now it's changed to 0.5%. So
Which sounds like nothing. But it's not nothing.
That's right. So for example, if we have 3 million votes cast for the governor's contest in this upcoming election, and we're talking about 0.5%, then if there's a difference or discrepancy of 15,000 votes or fewer, that would then trigger us to then do an automatic recount, right? And then that means that we're running all ballots that are returned to us for that election through our central count tabulators. So for this upcoming election, that is triggered after the Secretary of State canvasses the election, then it goes to court. The court has to order a recount. So the candidates themselves don't have to do anything, right? It's actually the filing officer. So it'll be Corey will be going to court and asking the judge to order that recount. And then they will be instructing the counties to then go through and to do that recount using our central count tabulators.
And one quick point is recounts require a hand count as well. So even though we do automatically for a regular election, for a recount, there will be also followed by political party hand count.
Or anything else to add?
So I will stress here that Scott mentioned the word automatic, an automatic recount. And I think in Arizona, which could be different in other jurisdictions, is that is not a right from a candidate or a member of the public. It really is triggered by the canvas. So it is that canvas, that's the moment looking at those results between the top 2 candidates or ballot measures that will trigger the recount through the court process that Scott was talking about.
Okay. And one other thing related to that is, I know that the public, as we're doing that recount, they'll be eagerly wanting, okay, are we updating results? Like, so post election day, when we start posting results, we'll do daily posts. Well, state statute says, no, those results are sealed and they're not then unveiled until you're in front of the judge, right? And at that point in time, those recount results will then be opened. Then those will be the new certified results for that election, if one of the contests triggers a recount.
Okay, well, so another twist, another wrinkle, if you will, as we head into this general election with this new law. I've got a lightning round coming up, but I also want to, if we have questions, it looks like we have a number of people that might have commented. Hopefully they're getting their questions answered by the staff that's monitoring the chat. But if there is a question for the panel, I hope the voice in my ear will let me know, and we'll go on from there. But let's go ahead and I'm going to ask you some quick questions. This doesn't mean we have to speak faster because we're going to be respectful of our translator that's on here for ASL. Can results be provided daily during a recount, Scott?
Well, I think I just answered that, so no.
All right, Corey, we just talked about the recount threshold. Do you want to remind everybody?
Right, so 1/2 of 1% between two candidates or the propositions.
All right. When should voters return an early ballot if they want it to be included in the 8 p.m. results on election night? Ray?
October 29th, Saturday, so that we have it by Saturday. So 7 days ahead of the day we want it.
Just to make sure.
Yes.
Just to make sure. All right, great. What is the cure period deadline, Ray?
There are the 2 deadlines: no signature, 7 p.m. on election day, just as if you're in the line of waiting. But for the voter-centric part of the questionable signature, that is 5 business days. And for this one, with the holiday considered, it's moved till Wednesday, November 16th.
All right. I got a classic question here for you, Scott. Is the tabulation equipment connected to the internet?
Absolutely not. Never has been.
Very good. What does the Secretary of State certify, or excuse me, when does the Secretary of State certify the election? Corey, we talked about this earlier.
December 5th.
Very good. What is the number of voters can text to track their ballot? Ray, you said it once.
I said it, and again, I'm getting paid to say
You
this,
you couldn't wait for me to ask.
text the word join to 628-683, and if I can get 1.8 million of our 1.9, I'll be happy.
I will say the texting works very, very well. And do election officials call elections, Corey?
Absolutely not. We certify election results at the point of the canvass.
Very good. I'm a fan of saying we count votes. We count them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like Count Chocula or the Count of Sesame Street. What precinct in Maricopa County has 87 contests on the ballot, Scott?
Oh, I actually don't know the answer to that.
You don't remember the precinct? You talked about this precinct earlier.
It's a precinct in Mesa that overlaps with the Tempe Union High School District.
Okay. All right. So if you're out there in Mesa and you have a few more ovals to fill in, you know why. Sheffield precinct. I'm told.
Sheffield.
Now you know. Now you know. Now we all know. That is all the time we have for this segment. I want to thank our panelists for being here. Thank you so much. We answered a lot of questions today. A special thank you, Scott, Ray, Corey. Next up, we're going to have a great discussion with our county recorder, Stephen Richer, and you're not going to miss that. Want to miss that? But first, we have a quick look at a video. All right. Well, that was an awful lot of information, and we sure hope that you enjoyed listening and got a lot of information and also a lot of your questions answered. So now, without further ado, we have a special chat
with our very own Maricopa County Recorder, Stephen Richer, and Matt Roberts, our Communications Manager.
Well, thanks, Betty. And again, my name is Matt Roberts, and we're lucky to have our county recorder here with us today by the name of Stephen Richer. And we're thrilled that you could take the time to come and talk to us today.
So lucky you had to walk down the hall and grab me. Yeah.
The commute to the studio was difficult today. Well, we appreciate you being here. It's a busy time of year, especially since we in the elections community kind of feel this is the unofficial start to the general election. You might feel differently.
Oh, I feel like it's been going since January 4th, 2021. And I think that's a little bit of a mischaracterization of what's actually happened, but it's not too far from the truth, which is a lot of people think of, well, you guys run those elections. And, you know, I know that election day is busy, but really elections are happening right now. Elections officially start pretty soon here with our UOCAVA ballots going out, which is our uniform and overseas voters. So we mail those out actually this weekend. So this weekend really is ballots are live. Now you can go online right now and you can see your sample ballot, but for most Arizonans, if you are on the active early voting list, the ballots won't be going out until October 12th, which is 27 days before Election Day.
It's been my understanding that there's thousands of voters around the world that are going to have the opportunity to start voting this weekend. So it's an exciting time as we get into the general election.
Yeah, no, voting all over the world is a song we should make. I think who was it that had a slightly different named song, I believe. So, but no, we have a map actually here at MCTEC that identifies all the different Maricopa County residents who are abroad, living in exciting places, probably having exciting adventures, or are in military assignment, maybe even on a submarine.
So while those folks are going to be receiving their ballots soon, most of Arizonans will be receiving their ballots in about 3 weeks from now or so. Yeah. But before that, we have a voter registration deadline, which for many people might be interested to know is coming up in the first couple of weeks of October.
That's right. So it would ordinarily fall on October 10th, which is 29 days before the election. But this year, because October 10th is a holiday, it falls on October 11th. So that is the last day to register to vote. And you can't participate. You can't get a ballot. I think that's a misunderstanding that's out there too, that, just ballots can go out. No, you have to show your identification. You have to register to vote. We check that on the back end through the Social Security Administration, through the Motor Vehicle Division. And so very important part. And we are not a state that allows same-day voter registration such that you can just say, oh, hey, I heard there's an election and today's the last day. I'm going to go register to vote and then I'm going to vote as well. Some states have that. We don't have that. Please register to vote by October 11th if you want to vote in this election.
Now, I think there's several ways that people can choose to register. What are the easier ways that people can participate and register to vote by that deadline?
The most common method is to do it when you're getting your driver's license, but you can go to servicearizona.com. That's the most common way by far. But you can also fill out a paper form, or you can come to our office, the recorder's office at 111 South 3rd Avenue, and you can say hello to us in person. We're happy to do that. We also host deputy registrar classes, which is training people who go out into the field and register people. You can have somebody assist you with the registration process. So this isn't like the voting process where I don't want anyone else in my booth, so I'm going to box out a little bit. No, you can have that be a collaborative process with somebody as long as you sign your own voter registration form.
So what happens if I'm busy, I'm away for that long weekend and I forget to register to vote and it's Wednesday after the voter registration deadline? Can I still register at that time? Can I cross my fingers and put something in the mail?
You just give me a Diet Coke and everything's good. No, unfortunately, you can still register to vote, but you will not be eligible for this November 8th election if you miss the voter registration deadline. So we'll process it and you'll be eligible for the very next election, which will probably be a jurisdictional election sometime in 2023.
Okay. So once the registration deadline passes and early ballots start to go out, and essentially the early voting window opens for the November 8th general election. Let's say you get your early ballot the next day, can I return it the next day, or should I hold on to it? Or
Well, if you're my wife, you have to return it the next day. So absolutely, in our household, you better turn that thing around within 24 hours. And then you go online to Be Ballot Ready, or you type in the text message that Ray, I guess, mentioned a few times. So you text join to that number, and you track it. You make sure that we received it. You make sure that we signature verified it. Make sure we put it through the tabulation process. That helps us out a lot, but you don't have to do that. You can send it back any day in the 27-day period, as long as it gets to us by 7 p.m. on November 8th, because we are a receipt state, not a postmark state, meaning don't put it in the USPS one day before November 8th, because USPS will not get it to us within 24 hours in all likelihood. So we recommend mailing it back at least 7 days in advance.
so at least 7 days, because it seems like, similarly, if somebody popped that into the mail let's say Saturday before the election, I live in Gilbert, it should be able to get downtown in a couple of days, you think?
I don't know, but don't risk it. Don't risk it. So mail it. If you're going to mail it back, mail it at least 7 days in advance. Now, if you haven't mailed it, you can still take it to any single one of our voting locations or our drop boxes, and you can drop it off. It works the exact same way as mailing it through the USPS, except for it's picked up directly by us, and we already have receipt of it, and it's picked up by a bipartisan team from a secure box. There's always 2 keys, so 2 people of different political parties have to pick it up. And so that you can do right up until 7 p.m. on election day.
Okay. There's a lot of people that choose to vote at the polls, and they're not a part of this active early voting list, but let's say they figure out that, I might not be able to vote in person on election day. Can they vote early, even though they're not on this active early voter list? And how would they do that?
Yes, absolutely you can. If Tuesday, that's getting, I don't know. Well, there's no college football or pro football on Tuesday, so I don't know what you're doing. So, but you're doing something else. You can go early voting to any one of the voting locations that's open starting 27 days before the election. And you can do that whether you are on the active early voting list and have received a mail ballot, or whether you're not on that. So you'll just show up, you'll get a ballot, you'll check in, and that will automatically deactivate any mail ballots that you have been sent. Those are canceled, they're dead. That prevents you from voting twice. You show up to any one of those voting locations, you check in, you can fill out your ballot. Now, if you are voting before election day, it is still governed by early voting law, meaning that you're going to have to put it in this time it will be white envelope, and you'll seal that envelope, you'll sign that envelope, and you'll put it in a secure box. Only on election day is it not governed by early voting, and you're going to feed it directly into the tabulation machine.
Let's say I show up on election day with my early ballot and I want to go in, I've taken the time to vote a 2-sided Maricopa County ballot. Can't I just go to the tabulation machine and take my early ballot and run it through the tabulator? Right.
So for security reasons, we program the early ballots differently than we program election day ballots. And that's because we don't want you taking out of your jacket pocket. I guess I couldn't really hide a ballot in there, but taking out your ballot and having an in-person ballot and then sticking 2 through the tabulator at the voting location. So it's programmed differently. Only the ballot that you get printed on election day would be able to be fed through the tabulator. Now, you can still take your early ballot and you can hold it up alongside, and your election day ballot will look the exact same. So you can start marking it and be like, okay, I researched this previously and there's a whole lot of judges on here and I really don't want to have to think about that again. So.
Well, we unlike our predecessors, don't get to answer any questions.
Oh, smart.
However, if people want to reach out and contact you and talk to you and send you particular emails asking about the election, how can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love responding. So message me on Twitter or email me at recorder@risc.maricopa.gov.
Excellent. I'm Matt Roberts. This is your county recorder, Stephen Richer, and we're thrilled that you hung around and watched our webinar today.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you so much, Recorder. We're going to wrap it up now. And maybe you want to take a screenshot of this slide, because if you want to stay informed, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter. You can apply to get involved at getinvolved.maricopa.vote. go to our website, elections.maricopa.gov. There's a wealth of information there. And of course, we are on every single social media platform. So you can go to the social media at Maricopa Vote. And of course, you can contact us, call us, email us anytime. And so with that, it concludes our virtual seminar for today. We hope that you found our time together beneficial, but we do want to hear back from you. So please take a moment to fill out and submit the online survey card that I'm going to send you and let us know how we're doing. And don't forget to register for the October 19th workshop. That's going to be all about tabulation and results. A special thanks to all of our presenters, our panelists, moderator, and recorder Stephen Richard. And so from all of us at Maricopa County, thank you for attending and have a great day.